The sky was clear above Musutafu. Then it wasn't. A bright line opened across the air, like a crack that did not belong there. It hummed. It bent light. Street lamps below flickered in the daytime. People looked up. Some pointed. Some raised phones. Something fell through the tier. It hit the road like a meteor, but it did not explode. It slammed down hard, and the street shook. Cars swerved. Glass rattled. A cloud of dust rolled out. In the center of it, a man stood up in a red and gold suit of armor. Inside the helmet, Tony Stark's screens went wild. Unknown atmosphere. Unknown satellite map. Unknown language signals. "Okay," Tony muttered. "That's new." Friday's calm voice filled his ears. "Sir, this environment does not match any stored location data." Tony turned his head. He saw tall buildings, billboards in a language he did not recognize, people in strange clothes, and a lot of shocked faces. A child cried. A mother pulled the child close. Tony lifted both hands, palms out. The armor's repulsors glowed, but he kept them low. "Hey," he said, voice amplified but warm. "Nobody panic. I'm not here to—" A loud boom cut him off. A few blocks away, a building groaned. A chunk of concrete broke free from an upper floor and fell. Tony's head snapped toward it. His HUD marked heat, motion, and panic. Dozens of people. Too close. He did not think. He moved. Jets flared. The suit shot upward, then forward, fast enough to make the street wind whip behind him. People screamed again, but now it was the kind of scream that meant, "What is that thing?" Tony reached the fallen concrete as it dropped. He angled his body under it, put both hands up, and fired downward. The repulsors shoved against the air and the ground. The suit screamed warnings, but it held. The slab slowed. It still hit his palms like a truck. Tony's boots dug into the road. Asphalt cracked. He grunted, "You're heavy." He guided the slab down and away from a crowd. Then he saw what caused it. A villain, at least Tony assumed it was a villain, was running through the street with a wild grin. The person's body was warped, like their bones were rubber and steel at the same time. They swung an arm, and the arm stretched like a cable and smashed a bus. People scattered. Tony's voice went cold. "Okay, bad guy. Great." He shot forward and planted himself between the villain and the nearest group of civilians. A shield snapped out from his forearm. A bright, curved wall of light. The villain's stretched fist hit the shield and bounced back with a sharp crack. The villain blinked. "What are you?" Tony glanced at the bus. He saw kids inside, crying and trapped. The doors were bent. Smoke came from the engine. He pointed a finger. A thin laser line cut the twisted metal around the door without touching the people inside. "Not your problem," Tony said. "Back away." The villain laughed and swung again. Tony did not fire a big blast. He used a short, hard repulsor burst at the villain's feet. The road popped. The villain stumbled. Tony pivoted, grabbed the bus door, and ripped it open with the suit's strength. "Go," he told the kids. "Run. Follow the crowd. Don't look back." A woman grabbed a child and bolted. Others followed. Then Tony heard it footsteps like thunder, not from him. A shadow fell across the street. People turned. A massive man landed with a booming thud, smiling like the sun. Blonde hair, big shoulders, a cape, a presence that made everyone's fear pause for half a second. "All Might is here," the man shouted. Tony's HUD tried to measure him. It failed to understand what it saw. All Might's eyes locked on Tony's armor. To All Might, it looked like a weapon in the middle of a crowded city. A stranger, unknown, flying, firing beams. All Might's smile stayed, but his voice shifted. "You there, armored villain, stand down." Tony froze for half a beat. "Villain?" Tony repeated. "Buddy, The villain behind Tony tried to take advantage. They sprang forward. All Might moved. Tony had seen fast. He had seen jets, missiles, and machines. This was different. All Might crossed the street in a blink and punched the villain in the stomach. The villain folded and flew away, crashing into a building far down the block. Tony's suit alarm screamed from the shockwave alone. Tony stared. Okay, so you're that kind of strong. All Might stepped toward Tony. Remove your helmet. Now. Tony's hand hovered near the release latch. He did not press it. Not happening, Tony said. I don't know who you are, and I don't know where I am, but I know I was saving people. All Might raised a fist, not to threaten civilians, to test the threat in front of him. Tony's body tightened. He shifted into a defensive stance, shield up, thrusters ready. All Might threw one punch. Tony braced. The shield flared bright. The force hit like a building falling. Tony slid backward, boots carving lines in the road. But he did not fall. His suit absorbed and redirected, pushing power through stabilizers and jets. He looked up, eyes wide behind his faceplate. All Might's eyebrows rose. He did not expect the stranger to hold. Tony's heart hammered. Okay, he said, breath sharp. We're doing this. He could have fired. He didn't. He aimed his palms up and out and created a wide energy barrier in front of the crowd instead, blocking the street with light. Then he turned his head toward the civilians. Get them out of here, Tony said, voice loud enough for the heroes arriving behind All Might to hear. Then we can talk. All Might watched the barrier, watched the crowd move, watched the armored man choose rescue over attack. His smile softened, just a little. Inside Tony's helmet, Friday spoke again, quieter now. Sir, I have attempted to connect to our satellite network. There is no response. Tony swallowed. His eyes scanned the skyline, the strange signs, the unfamiliar tech. Friday finished the thought for him. Sir, she said, this is not our Earth. The armored man did not resist the moment the pros surrounded him. He lowered his hands. He powered down his weapons. He kept his shield ready, but he did not point it at anyone. That alone made Aizawa's eyes narrow. All Might's presence held the street like an anchor. More heroes arrived. Police lines formed. Civilians were guided away. The armored man spoke with a controlled tone. I'll come with you, but I'm not handing over my suit, and I'm not letting anyone touch my power core. Understood? Aizawa stepped forward. His scarf shifted like a living rope around his shoulders. All Might, Aizawa said quietly. We don't know what this is. We will find out, All Might replied. He looked at the armored man. If you truly want to help, you will cooperate. The armored man tilted his helmet slightly, like a sigh you could hear through metal. Cooperate. Sure. But I don't do cages. They brought him to a secure facility first. Then, when the situation grew bigger than a police question, they brought him to the place that could hold both danger and answers. U.A. High school. Tony Stark did not like being escorted, even if the people escorting him were polite, even if one of them could punch a truck into the sky. He followed anyway, because he had one rule, always. If people were scared, you proved you were not the monster. U.A. His main gates opened with heavy security checks. Cameras tracked him from every angle. Drones hovered. Sensors swept him. Quirk users stood at distance, ready. Nezu waited inside, smiling like a friendly teacher. Welcome, Nezu said. His voice was cheerful, but his eyes were sharp. I'm Principal Nezu. You can call me Nezu. Tony looked down at the small animal in a suit. Okay, Tony said. This is officially the weirdest day of my life. Nezu gestured toward a clean room with reinforced walls. We will talk inside. No tricks, no sudden attacks, just answers. Tony took a slow breath. Fine. He stepped into the room. The door shut behind him with a solid lock. All Might stood on one side of the room. Aizawa stood on the other. Several staff members watched through thick glass. Some students had gathered in the hall, peeking around corners until teachers shooed them away. Tony could feel the eyes on him through the helmet. Nezu sat on a chair like it belonged to him. First question, he said. What are you? Tony almost laughed. He tapped his chest plate. I'm a guy in a suit. Aizawa's eyes stayed flat. That is not a real answer. It is the most real answer you'll get, Tony said. Where I'm from, people aren't born throwing fire or stretching arms. We build tools. I built this. Nezu's ears twitched. You built a device that can fly, fire energy, create shields, and lift heavy objects. Tony shrugged. Yes. All Might leaned forward, voice kind but firm. Are you here to hurt people? Tony's jaw tightened behind the helmet. If I wanted to hurt people, I wouldn't be sitting in your nice little box. Aizawa's eyes sharpened. We are not joking around. Tony's tone softened, just a little. Neither am I. Nezu held up a paw. Let's do this simply. Tell us your story in a few clear points. Tony paused. In his world, telling the truth was a risk. People used it. People twisted it. But these heroes did not feel like politicians. Not yet. Fine, Tony said. Here's the short version. He raised one finger. I'm an engineer. I build things. Second finger. I used to build weapons. I thought I was being smart. I wasn't. Third finger. People got hurt because of what I made. Fourth finger. So I built something to stop that from happening again. Fifth finger. This suit. It lets me protect people. It lets me fix mistakes. With my own hands. All Might's face changed. He understood regret. He understood choosing to carry weight. Aizawa did not soften. He had seen too many villains with sad stories. Nezu nodded slowly. Thank you. Next question. What powers you? Tony's palm rested over the center of his chest plate. No. Aizawa's scarf twitched slightly. Ready. Tony's voice stayed calm. I said I'd cooperate. I didn't say I'd hand you the keys to my heart. All Might stepped in before the tension snapped. We can respect that, he said. But he did not sound fully sure. Nezu smiled again. Then let us ask different questions. Do you have a quirk? Tony blinked behind the helmet. A what? Nezu explained in simple terms. A special ability people are born with. Almost everyone has one. Tony stared. So you're telling me this world is full of superpowered people? Like normal people can just… He gestured vaguely, remembering the stretching villain and All Might's punch. Yes, Nezu said. That is our normal. Tony went quiet. Inside the helmet, Friday whispered. Sir, the term quirk appears to refer to genetic anomalies. Tony muttered back, low enough that the room did not hear. Great. A planet of walking weapons. Aizawa watched his helmet. Who are you talking to? Tony hesitated. Then he decided. My assistant. Nezu's eyes brightened. An AI. Tony did not deny it. She keeps me alive. Aizawa stepped closer. Remove your helmet. Tony's head turned toward him. No. Aizawa's eyes flashed red. His quirk activated. Nothing happened. Tony's suit did not blink. Its systems did not shut down. Its power did not weaken. Aizawa's brows twitched in surprise. For him, this was rare. His quirk stopped most fights before they began. Tony tilted his head. Was that supposed to do something? Aizawa's voice stayed controlled. It stops quirks. Tony shrugged. Then we're good. Because this isn't a quirk. All Might exhaled slowly. So you are. Quirkless. Tony let the word sit. It sounded like an insult here, or a label. In my world, Tony said, that word doesn't exist. Nezu leaned forward. Then you are an outsider, an unknown, a potential ally, or a potential disaster. Tony laughed once, short. Finally, someone honest. The door opened a crack. A serious-looking woman in a suit stepped in with 2 guards. Nezu's smile did not change, but Tony felt the temperature drop. The woman held a tablet. Principal Nezu. All Might. Eraserhead. I'm here on behalf of the Hero Public Safety Commission. Tony's HUD tagged her as authority. His brain tagged her as trouble. She looked at Tony like he was a shipment, not a person. We have reviewed footage, she said. A foreign armed individual appears in public, uses unknown weapon systems, and engages in combat without a license. Tony stared. A license? All Might coughed gently. Hero work is regulated here. The commission woman continued. We require registration, a full equipment inspection, and transfer of any dangerous technology for national security evaluation. Tony's tone went sharp. Transfer. It is standard, she said. Tony's hands curled into fists at his sides. The suit reacted, faint lights brightening. All Might stepped closer, eyes calm but warning. Easy. Tony took a breath. He forced his shoulders down. I'll register, Tony said. I'll answer questions. I'll agree to safety rules. But nobody takes my tech. Nobody owns it. And nobody tells me I can't save a life because I didn't fill out the right form. The commission woman's mouth tightened. That is not your choice. Tony leaned forward slightly, voice quiet and dangerous. In my experience, that sentence usually comes right before someone becomes the villain. Aizawa watched the woman. He watched Tony. He understood both kinds of threat. Nezu raised a paw again. We will handle this carefully, he said. For now, our guest will remain here under supervision. UA will study the armor with permission. No forced transfer. The commission woman's eyes narrowed, but she backed off for the moment. Tony's helmet turned toward Nezu. You're the small one, he said, but you're clearly the boss. Nezu smiled. I try. They moved Tony to a secure support lab later. Not a prison cell, a workshop with guardrails. Tony walked past students in the hall, teenagers in uniforms. Some stared like he was a superhero. Some stared like he was a bomb. One green-haired boy, freckled, looked like his brain was on fire with questions. He clutched a notebook so hard it bent. Tony's faceplate hid his expression, but Tony's gut tightened. Kids. They trained kids to fight. He saw posters on the walls. Hero names, hero rankings, training schedules. In his world, a kid like this would be in school learning math and complaining about homework, not learning how to take down monsters. He didn't like it. He also didn't know how to fix it. In the lab, Tony finally let Friday connect to local networks in a limited way. He built a firewall that would make even his old enemies groan. Friday spoke softly. Language translation is in progress. Local systems are unusual. Many rely on biological capability rather than technology. Tony scoffed. So I'm the caveman here. He began to check his suit. He checked the arc reactor. He checked the seals. Mei Hatsume burst into the lab like a cannonball, eyes shining. Oh wow, she shouted. Baby, I can feel the engineering from here. Tony's helmet turned. Who are you? Mei Hatsume, support course. I build stuff, she said, already circling him. How do you keep the joints smooth at that speed? What material is that? Is that a mini reactor? Is it hot? Can I touch it? No, Tony said fast. Mei frowned. You're mean. I'm alive, Tony replied. Aizawa's scarf snapped out and gently hooked Mei's waist, pulling her back before she got any closer. Not now, Aizawa said. Mei pouted, then grinned again. Not now means later. Tony watched her bounce away and muttered, I just met my worst nightmare. Nezu's voice came from behind the glass, amused. Welcome to you. That night, All Might visited Tony alone. No commission, no students, just the two of them in the lab, with quiet lights and hums. All Might's smile was smaller now, more human. You chose rescue first today, he said. That matters. Tony kept his helmet on. He worked on a small panel, tools moving with practiced speed. I don't do this for applause. All Might nodded. Then why do you do it? Tony's hands paused. For a second, his voice lost its humor. Because people get hurt when smart people don't care. All Might looked at him for a long moment. Then, perhaps, we can trust you. Tony snorted. Trust is a big word. Allies, All Might offered. Tony didn't answer right away. Outside in the city, other eyes watched. Redestro's people replayed videos frame by frame. They zoomed in on the arc reactor glow. They measured repulsor output based on crater size. This is a new kind of power, one of them whispered. Not a quirk, another said, excited. A product. And deep in the shadows, far from cameras, All for One listened to reports. A metal man who could fly. A suit that ignored erasure. A power source that did not tire like flesh. All for One smiled. "Bring me everything," he said softly. "And do not scare him off. Not yet." "Back at you." Tony finished a quick diagnostic. Friday spoke in his ear. "Sir, I have detected multiple attempts to access our signal patterns. Some are official, some are not." Tony's face hardened behind the helmet. "So the sharks smell blood." He looked at the world outside the lab window. Bright city lights. A different planet. A different kind of hero system. And kids training to fight monsters. Tony's stomach twisted. "Okay," he whispered. "New world. New rules." He tapped the arc reactor plate once, like a promise. "But I'm still me." The first major strike came 3 days later, and it was not subtle. It hit a busy district at midday. Sirens screamed before anyone understood why. Smoke rose between towers. People poured into streets like spilled water, running in every direction at once. From the top of a building, Hawks watched with narrowed eyes, feathers ready. "This is too organized," he murmured into his communicator. "This isn't random." Endeavor's voice snapped back, harsh as fire. "Then it's a message. Where's All Might?" "En route," Hawks replied. "And the armored guest?" Hawks glanced down. He saw it. A red and gold streak rose from the direction of you. Cutting through the sky like a fast jet. It moved clean and controlled, not sloppy like a villain showing off. Tony was heading straight toward the chaos. At the command center, the commission woman pointed at a screen. "He is not licensed," she said. "Order him back." A lower official swallowed. "There are civilians." "Order him back," she repeated. A pro-hero nearby muttered, "You can't put paperwork between people and death." And still, an assistant ran out with a clipboard, as if forms could stop explosions. Tony's helmet speakers crackled as he flew. "Friday, give me the map." "Multiple heat signatures," Friday said. "Primary threat moving toward a shopping street. Secondary team dispersing." Tony groaned. "Shopping street. Great." He dipped lower. People looked up and screamed again. Some pointed, some cheered, some hid. Tony saw the threat before his sensors finished labeling it. A thing crawled out of smoke like a nightmare stitched together wrong. It was big, too big. Muscles bulged like it was made to punch through walls. Its skin had patches like it had been burned and healed and burned again. Its eyes were not human. A Nomu. Tony didn't know the word yet, but he knew the type. Weapon. The Nomu slammed into the street and sent cars bouncing. It roared. Then it moved. Fast. It charged a crowd that couldn't move fast enough. Tony fired both palms down and shot ahead, sliding into the space between the Nomu and the people. A wide energy barrier burst from his suit, curving like a shield dome. The Nomu hit it and bounced, but the shield flickered from the force. Tony's suit alarms blared. Impact high. Shield drain. Tony gritted his teeth. "You're a strong, ugly guy, huh?" The Nomu punched again. Tony didn't hold the shield in one spot. He moved it like a moving wall, stepping and sliding to guide the punches away from the crowd. Then he opened a channel loud enough for local heroes. "I don't know your system," Tony said, "but I'm not letting it hit those people. Whoever can evacuate, do it now." Aizawa landed on a nearby roof, eyes already red. His scarf flowed out. "All units," Aizawa said into comms, calm and sharp. "Primary goal, evacuation. Second, separate the Nomu from civilians." Shoto Todoroki arrived next, ice spreading across the road to form a barrier line. Bakugo came in from above with explosions, blasting debris away from escape routes. Deku was not supposed to be there, he was a student. But he was watching from a safe distance with other trainees, pulled back by a teacher. His eyes were wide, mouth open. The armored man was doing what All Might did, protecting first. And he did it with a completely different kind of power. Tony tried to scan the Nomu's body structure. Friday's voice tightened. "Sir, something is interfering with our sensors." Tony's HUD flickered. Range markers lagged. Target locks stuttered. Tony swore. "Jammer." Across the street, a thin villain with a headset smiled and raised a hand. The air crackled with a strange quirk effect. Tony's suit did not shut down. It didn't care about quirk erasure, and it wasn't magic for quirks to turn off. But the interference messed with his information, and Tony fought best with information. Fine. He could fight without it. Tony launched micro-drones from his back. Tiny machines shot out like a swarm of metal insects, spreading wide. They built a map the old-fashioned way eyes. The jammer villain's smile faded. What? Aizawa's scarf snapped out and yanked the jammer off their feet. Aizawa stared, eyes burning. The jammer's quirk died under his gaze. The interference dropped. Tony's HUD stabilized. "Thank you," Tony said. Aizawa did not reply. He was busy slamming the villain into a wall with controlled force. The Nomu roared again and leaped at Tony. Tony boosted backward, feet leaving the ground. The Nomu followed with a second jump, like gravity didn't matter. Tony rose higher, leading it away from people. The Nomu grabbed at his chest. Tony twisted mid-air and let the claws scrape armor instead of the reactor plate. He fired a repulsor blast into the Nomu's face, not to kill, but to shove it back. The Nomu barely flinched. Tony's eyebrows rose behind the helmet. "Oh, you're one of those." He switched tactics. A hard beam shot from his palm and cut the streetlight poles above the Nomu. The poles fell like spears. Tony used a second blast to bend them around the Nomu's limbs, pinning it for 1 second. 1 second was all he needed. He dropped to the street and planted both hands on the ground. A shock pulse rippled outward from his suit, cracking the road and knocking the Nomu off balance. Then a blast of fire slammed into the Nomu's side. Endeavor had arrived. "Move," Endeavor growled at Tony. Like Tony was in the way of a proper fight. Tony's helmet tilted. "Nice to meet you too." Endeavor's flames wrapped the Nomu in a burning cage. The Nomu screamed, but it didn't stop. It pushed through with raw muscle. Endeavor's eyes narrowed. It doesn't die. Tony's mind raced. Regeneration. Enhanced strength. Designed to last. "Then we don't play its game," Tony said. He shot upward again, leading it toward an open intersection with fewer people. Todoroki raised an ice wall behind it, cutting off retreat. Bakugo blasted the ground in front of it, forcing it to stumble into the center. Aizawa landed, eyes locked. He tried erasure. The Nomu's movement slowed for half a breath. Then it forced itself forward anyway. Aizawa's face tightened. "It's resisting." Tony's suit analyzed that. So it's partly quirk-based, partly just built wrong. The Nomu lunged again. And then the air shifted. A shadow fell. And for a moment, everyone felt it. All Might landed. He didn't just arrive. He claimed the space. Civilians near the edge stopped running and stared, like seeing him made the world make sense again. All Might's eyes flicked to Tony. A fast check. Ally or enemy? Tony raised one hand, palm open. "Not the problem," he said. All Might nodded once. Then he moved. All Might's first hit was not a full-power city-breaking smash. He was careful. People were close. Buildings were close. But it was still a hit that made the ground jump. The Nomu's head snapped back. Its body slid through the intersection and carved a trench through asphalt. Tony's suit alarm screamed again, this time from the shockwave. Tony stared. Even after seeing All Might before, it still felt unreal. All Might closed the distance in an instant and grabbed the Nomu's arms. The Nomu fought like an animal. It bucked and twisted, trying to touch All Might's face, his chest, anything. All Might held it. "Now," All Might shouted. Tony didn't hesitate. He raised both hands and fired a focused blast into the Nomu's center mass, not to burn through buildings behind it, but to overload the monster's balance and force it down. The beam hit. The Nomu screamed. Its feet dug into the road. It still didn't fall. Tony's eyes widened. "You're kidding." All Might grunted, muscles swelling as he pushed harder. He forced the Nomu's head down, pinning it in the perfect angle. Tony took the opening. "Friday," he said, voice tight. "Maximum output, narrow beam, 2 seconds." "Sir," Friday warned, "that may cause localized damage." Tony's jaw clenched. I know. That's why it's narrow. He fired. This blast was different, brighter, cleaner. It punched into the Nomu like a drill of light. The Nomu's body locked up. Its regeneration stuttered under the stress. Its muscles spasmed like wires snapping. All Might threw it upward with a roar, launching it high into the air to keep the danger away from the streets. Tony boosted up after it, fast. Above the rooftops, the Nomu flailed, trying to orient itself. Tony spun midair, locked the target manually, and fired a final shot that hit the Nomu in the back and drove it downward straight into a deep crater All Might had already made in an empty construction zone. The Nomu hit hard. It didn't die, but it stopped moving for the moment. Heroes moved in with restraints and special tools. Endeavor landed nearby, scowling at Tony like he hated needing the help. Hawks watched from above, eyes sharp, already thinking about what this armor man meant for the future. And in the confusion, Tony's HUD caught something else. A small flash on a side street. A figure slipping away, holding a tiny piece of metal. A piece of Tony's armor, torn off when the Nomu grabbed him. Tony shot toward them. The figure turned just long enough for Tony to see a grin, then vanished into an alley with smoke cover and fast movement. Tony fired a drone after them. The drone's camera feed cut out after 2 seconds, fried by a quirk pulse. Tony hovered above the alley, furious. "Friday," he said low. "Tell me you got something." "I recorded partial data," Friday replied. "Not enough to identify." Tony's stomach sank. A piece of his suit was out there now. Down below, ambulances arrived. Civilians cried. Heroes directed traffic. All Might looked up at Tony. He pointed to a rooftop. Tony landed there a moment later. For a second it was quiet, just wind and distant sirens. All Might studied Tony. "You risked yourself for strangers," he said. Tony's voice came out rougher than he wanted. "That's the job. You said you were not a villain," All Might continued. "But this world will fear what it does not understand." Tony laughed once, bitter. "Yeah, tell me about it." All Might stepped closer. "Then let us understand." Tony stared at him through the faceplate. He could keep hiding. He could keep being the armor. But these people were already making choices about him. The Commission, the heroes, the villains, apparently. And All Might had just trusted him enough to throw a monster into the sky and give him the opening. Tony reached up slowly. His fingers found the release. The helmet opened with a clean hiss, folding back. A gust of cold air hit his face. Tony Stark looked up at All Might with tired eyes, messy hair, and a small cut at his temple. He looked human, not a machine, not a monster, just a man who had jumped into danger anyway. "My name is Tony," he said simply. "Tony Stark." All Might's eyes widened a fraction. Not because the name meant anything here. It didn't. Because the face changed everything. A quirkless man had stood against a Nomu. A quirkless man had flown beside All Might. All Might's voice softened. "Tony Stark," he repeated, like anchoring it. Then, "Tony, thank you." Tony swallowed. He tried to joke, because the truth hurt. "Don't thank me yet," Tony said. "Someone just stole a piece of my suit, and if the wrong people learn how it works..." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. All Might's expression turned serious. Below them, in the city, screens already showed shaky video of the fight. The armored man, the beams, the flight, the moment the helmet opened. And in the shadows far away, someone replayed that helmet opening again and again, smiling. Because now they knew what mattered most. The armor could be copied, and the man inside could be targeted. Tony put the helmet back on. Slower this time. "All right," he said. "Now we do the part where everyone panics." All Might looked out over the city, cape fluttering. "Yes," he said, "and we must be ready." The sirens kept screaming, and somewhere in the noise, a bigger plan quietly began to move. The city did not calm down after the fight. It got louder. By the next morning, every screen in Musutafu had the same shaky clips on repeat. A red and gold armored man flying between buildings, a monster slamming through streets. All might, throwing that monster into the sky, then the helmet opening for a moment, showing a human face. People zoomed in on Tony's eyes like it would explain everything. News anchors argued in bright studios. Some smiled and called him a hero. Some frowned and called him a walking weapon. Online, people fought over one word like it could win the debate. Quirkless. Tony heard it again and again as he walked through U.A.'s halls with 2 staff members and 1 board police escort. He was still allowed to stay. That was the good news. The bad news was the way the rules wrapped around him tighter every hour. Aizawa led him into a meeting room where a tall stack of papers waited on the table. The stack looked like it could stop a small bullet. Tony stared at it. "You've got to be kidding me," he said. Aizawa's face did not change. "This is not a joke." Nezu sat at the far end with a calm smile. Temporary guest status, liability forms, damage responsibility, privacy agreements, technology safety pledges. Tony slowly sat down. "Do you have a form for the form that explains the forms?" Nezu's smile widened just a little. "Not yet." Friday's voice whispered in Tony's ear. "Sir, I can complete these documents quickly if you authorize me." Tony muttered under his breath. "If you do, they'll invent a new form to stop you." Aizawa slid a pen across the table. "We need structure. You cannot keep flying into public spaces without clear authority." "I flew into public spaces to keep people alive," Tony said. He leaned back in his chair. "Your paperwork didn't catch the falling building." "I did." Aizawa's eyes narrowed. "This is not about pride. It's about control." Tony's mouth tightened. "Yeah, that's what worries me." Nezu lifted a paw. "Both of you are correct, in different ways. Tony, you are new. This world has rules because mistakes here can kill cities. Aizawa, pushing too hard can create enemies." Aizawa didn't argue. He just watched Tony like Tony might explode if he blinked. Tony tapped the table once. "Fine, I'll sign your safety stuff, but no one gets full access to my suit. No forced inspections, no confiscation. If the commission wants to call me an asset, they can do it without me." Nezu's eyes were kind, but his voice was sharp. "You should assume they will try anyway." Tony didn't answer, because he already knew. He felt it in the way the world looked at him now. Not as a person, as a key. Izuku Midoriya waited outside the support building like he'd been planted there. He was supposed to be in class, but he held his notebook tight, eyes wide, and looked like he would burst if he didn't ask something soon. A teacher tried to shoo him away once. It didn't work. He moved, but he didn't leave. Tony stepped out, still in partial armor, helmet off, chest plate on, arms and legs armored. He looked more like a tired athlete in weird gear than a monster. Deku took 1 step forward, then stopped himself. He bowed fast, too fast. Stark-san, no, Tony, sir," he stammered. Tony blinked. "Okay, breathe. What's up, kid?" Deku's eyes flicked to the armor, then to Tony's face. You're quirkless." Tony's jaw tightened at the word. "That's what they tell me." "And you still fought that thing," Deku said, voice shaking with excitement and fear at the same time. "You still went first." Tony stared at him for a second, not sure where this was going. Deku swallowed. "So why?" It was a small question. It landed like a weight. Tony looked past Deku toward the training fields, where kids ran drills and practiced takedowns. Kids, not soldiers, not adults. Kids. He kept his voice simple. "Because someone had to." Deku's brows pulled together. "But you could have stayed back. You could have waited for someone stronger." Tony let out a short breath that almost sounded like a laugh. "Kid, I've spent my whole life in rooms full of someone stronger who still let bad things happen. If you see a problem and you can move, you move." Deku nodded fast, writing already. "So it's like a choice, not a quirk." Tony pointed at the notebook. "If you write, 'not a quirk' in big letters, I'm taking that thing away." Deku froze. Then he smiled awkwardly. "Sorry." Tony's eyes softened for a moment. "Listen, you're brave. I can see that. But don't worship the suit. The suit is just a tool. Tools can be stolen. Deku's smile faded. They stole a piece yesterday. Tony's stomach tightened. Yeah. Deku looked down. Then, will they come here? Tony didn't lie. Yes. Deku lifted his head, fear and determination mixing in his face. Then we should prepare. Tony almost said, "You're a kid." He almost said, "Stay out of it." But he saw the way Deku held himself, the way he watched the world like it was a puzzle he needed to solve to save people. Tony nodded once. Good. Preparation is what keeps people alive. Aizawa's voice cut in from behind Deku. Midoriya, class. Deku flinched like he'd been caught stealing. Tony glanced at Aizawa. He's asking the right questions. Aizawa's eyes stayed flat. He is also a student. Tony looked back at Deku. Go. Learn. And if you ever build something, build it to protect people, not to impress them. Deku nodded hard, then ran. Aizawa watched Tony's face. You're getting attached. Tony's mouth pulled into a thin smile. I'm getting worried. Aizawa didn't blink. Good. Stay worried. Worry keeps you from becoming careless. Tony's smile disappeared. Or it makes you try to control everything. Aizawa stepped closer, voice low. Do you want control? Tony's eyes stayed on him. I want safety. Aizawa's gaze sharpened. Those are not always the same thing. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Tony turned away. Tell that to the commission. The commission did not wait. 2 days later, they requested Tony appear at a secure office in the city for formal review. The words sounded polite. The meaning did not. Nezu allowed it only with escorts. Aizawa, a small team of pro-heroes, and layered security. Tony wore his suit, but he kept it in a low-threat mode. No weapons extended, no big lights, just armor and quiet power. The commission office was clean and cold. It smelled like paper and metal. The same woman from before sat across a table from him with a folder that looked even thicker than you. A stack. She didn't smile. Tony Stark, she said, like testing the name. Tony leaned back in the chair. That's what I'm told I'm called. Her eyes didn't move. Your equipment violates multiple safety standards. It is unregistered. It is dangerous. It's also the reason your civilians didn't get turned into paste, Tony replied. Aizawa stood behind Tony like a shadow, watching, listening. The woman slid a document forward. You will comply with a full inspection and surrender of any weapon-grade components. Tony didn't touch it. No. Her eyes narrowed. You are in our country. Tony's voice stayed calm, but there was steel under it. And you're in my face. We can both state facts. She tapped the paper. Your technology could destabilize our society. Tony almost laughed. Your society trains children to fight monsters in the street. Maybe it's already unstable. Aizawa's scarf shifted slightly, warning Tony without words. Tony held up a hand. No, I get it. You want control. You want to make sure nobody can build something that outclasses your system. The woman's voice turned sharper. This is about preventing villain escalation. Tony leaned forward now, eyes hard. Then chase villains. Don't chain the people who stop them. The woman's lips tightened. Your suit can be stolen. Tony's face went still. Not if I prevent it. The woman watched him. You cannot prevent everything. Tony's jaw clenched. That sentence stabbed right at the center of him, because it was true. Aizawa spoke, calm and firm. We are not here to threaten him. We are here to set terms that keep the public safe. The woman's eyes flicked to Aizawa, annoyed that a hero was not fully on her leash. She slid a second paper forward. Hero licensing process. Temporary special permit. Strict conditions. Tony stared at it. And if I don't sign? Her voice was soft now. Then you become an illegal armed actor. That is a problem we will solve. Tony didn't flinch. I've heard that tone before. Aizawa's voice stayed low. Tony. Tony exhaled. He didn't want a war with the government. Not here. Not now. Not with kids around. He picked up the pen. He signed the temporary permit. He added his own line under the signature. No forced transfer of technology. No confiscation. The woman's eyes narrowed further, but she didn't stop him. She just filed it away like she would deal with it later. Tony stood. Now we're done. As he walked out, Aizawa fell into step beside him. Why did you sign? Aizawa asked. Tony didn't look at him. Because this world has enough enemies without me adding another. Aizawa's eyes stayed forward. And because you don't want them going after the students. Tony's lips pressed together. Yeah. Aizawa nodded once, like he respected that, even if he didn't like the situation. Endeavor chose the worst possible moment to show up. It was later that week, during a controlled training demonstration at UA's field. Tony had agreed to show how his suit could assist in rescue work. Not fight, rescue. He floated above the field in low hover, projecting a hard light barrier to simulate shielding civilians from debris. Teachers watched. Students watched from a safe line. Endeavor landed on the far side with fire simmering around him, like anger that never cooled. He didn't ask permission. He called out, "Stark." Tony lowered slightly, then landed. "Fire guy." Endeavor's eyes narrowed. "Endeavor." "Tony," Tony replied. "We're doing first names?" "That's brave." A few students snorted. Aizawa's glare shut that down. Endeavor stepped closer, voice low enough that the kids couldn't hear well, but loud enough to cut the air. "You are a man in armor." Tony's eyebrows rose. "Astute." Endeavor's jaw tightened. In this world, power must be accountable. Tony looked him up and down. "You mean controlled?" Endeavor's flames flared a little. Controlled, if necessary. Tony's face hardened. I've met a lot of people who say, if necessary. It always becomes always. Endeavor took another step. "Your armor is not a quirk. That makes it worse. Anyone could wear it." Tony's stomach tightened again. "Yeah, that's the problem." Endeavor pointed at Tony's chest plate. "Then you will give it to those who can keep it safe." Tony stared at him. "So you." Endeavor's eyes burned. "I do not need it." Tony's voice turned dry. "Sure." Aizawa stepped between them, scarf loose but ready. "Endeavor, this is not the place." Endeavor didn't move. "I am a top hero. This is always my place." Tony let out a slow breath, then looked past Endeavor toward the students. The kids were watching like this was a show they didn't know they bought tickets for. Tony hated that. He took a step back. "You want accountability? Fine. Here's mine." He tapped his armor once. "This suit answers to me. Not to your ego. Not to your government. Me." Endeavor's voice was ice. "And if you fall?" Tony's eyes didn't drop. "Then I'll build a way to make sure nobody else can use it." Endeavor studied him for a long moment, like he was deciding if Tony was a threat or a tool. Then he turned away, flames trailing behind him like a warning. Tony watched him go. Aizawa spoke quietly beside him. "That man is difficult, but he is not wrong about one thing." Tony glanced at him. "Which?" Aizawa's eyes stayed on the field. "If your technology spreads, the villains will not stop." Tony's mouth went tight. "I know. The first theft attempt at UA happened at night. Tony wasn't asleep. He rarely slept well, even on his own Earth. He sat in the support lab with his helmet off, tools spread around him. He was rebuilding a damaged section of plating. He was also writing code. Code was easier than feelings." Friday's voice stayed low. "Sir, I have detected movement near the outer fence. Multiple heat signatures." Tony's head lifted. "How many?" 5. One appears to be a distraction." Tony stood slowly. "Of course it is." He slid the helmet on, the suit sealed with a soft hiss. He moved through the hallway like a shadow of metal. Quiet thrusters. Silent steps. He reached a side window and looked out. Dark shapes moved near the support building's rear entrance. One carried a case. Another held something that glowed faintly with quirk power. Tony's HUD marked them as threats. He opened a channel to Aizawa and Nezu. "Company," Tony said, "behind the support building." Aizawa's reply came instantly. "Do not engage alone." Tony's lips pressed together. Too late. He opened a small panel on his wrist and released 2 drones. They zipped into the night, silent and fast. One of the thieves noticed too late. A drone fired a small electric pulse that locked the thief's arms for a second. The thief hit the ground hard. The others spun. One fired a quirk burst that sent a wave through the air like a shove. Tony's drones rocked but held. Tony stepped out into the open, landing between them and the lab door. "Okay," Tony said, voice amplified. "Here's how this goes. You leave, or you wake up in a hospital and a prison." The thief laughed, nervous. "It talks." Tony tilted his head. "Yeah, I do that." The thief with the glowing quirk raised their hand. A pulse hit Tony's suit. Tony's sensors flickered for half a second, like static. Tony's eyes narrowed. Cute. He fired a net from his forearm. It shot out and wrapped around the quirk user's torso, pinning their arms. Another thief threw something like a smoke bomb. It hit the ground and burst into thick black cloud. Tony's HUD switched to thermal. He saw them clearly anyway. He moved like a guided missile, grabbing one thief by the collar and lifting them off the ground. "You guys really thought smoke would stop a guy who lives in a helmet?" Tony asked. He tossed the thief into a patch of grass away from hard edges. A third thief bolted toward the lab door, hoping to grab something fast and run. Tony started after them. Then his HUD flashed a new alert. Student dormitory motion detected. Tony froze. A second team. A distraction. His heart kicked hard. He could chase the thief near the lab and stop the tech grab. Or he could protect the kids. He didn't think. He moved. Jets flared. He shot across campus in a red streak. Behind him, the thief near the lab slipped inside the smoke and vanished. Tony barely noticed. He hit the dorm roof, landed, and scanned fast. He saw a figure on a balcony, moving like they belonged there. A student had stepped outside, half asleep, confused by noise. Tony's stomach dropped. The figure lunged. Tony fired a short repulsor burst that knocked the attacker sideways without blasting the student. The attacker hit the wall, rolled, and ran fast. Tony launched a drone after them. The drone's camera caught a partial face, a grin, a confident look. Then the feed went dead from a quirk pulse. Aizawa landed beside Tony a second later, scarf snapping. "You chose the students," Aizawa said. Tony's voice was tight. "Yeah." Aizawa's eyes narrowed toward the dark campus. "They wanted you to choose. Either way, they win something." Tony stared at the dorm window where the student stood shaking. "I know," Tony said. "And I hate it." Nezu's voice came through comms. "We lost sight of the intruders. Campus security teams are sweeping." Tony shut his eyes for a moment inside the helmet. A piece of his armor was already out there. Now thieves had tested Yu's defenses and his instincts. They learned his weakness. He would always pick people over property. Aizawa looked at him. "You feel guilty." Tony laughed once, sharp and tired. "Welcome to my personality." Aizawa's voice stayed calm. "Guilt can push you into bad choices." Tony opened his eyes. "Then I'll make a good choice." He looked out over the city lights. "They're not going to stop," he said. "So I'm going to build something that makes stealing my tech useless." Aizawa watched him. "What?" Tony's voice was simple and firm. "A lock." Tony didn't call it failsafe out loud to anyone who didn't need to know. He called it a lock, because that's what it was. A lock on the suit. A lock on the reactor access. A lock on the weapon systems. A lock even on the way the metal fit together. If someone stole a part, it would be dead weight. If someone forced him, it would shut down safely. And if someone tried to copy it, the copy would be incomplete and unstable. That was the plan. Plans kept people alive. But plans also made enemies move faster. The first problem was simple. Tony needed space, materials, and time. U.A. had a good support lab, but it wasn't built for what he wanted to test. He needed a high-security facility with heavy tools, the kind that could stress armor parts until they screamed. Nezu arranged it. Officially, it was a support partnership evaluation. Lots of words that meant, "We're watching you and we want to learn." Tony accepted anyway. He didn't have the luxury of pride. The second problem was less simple. Mei Hatsume found out. She appeared in the lab doorway like a rocket that learned how to walk. "You're going off campus to do secret tests?" she shouted. "Take me." Tony didn't even look up. "No." May gasped like he punched her. "That's cruel." Tony finally looked at her. "May, you are brilliant. You are also chaos in human form." "Thank you," May said, beaming. "That was not a compliment," Tony replied. Aizawa stood nearby, arms crossed. "She will not go." May pouted. "Boo." Nezu's calm voice came from the doorway. "May, you may attend under strict supervision. Tony's work will benefit from your support knowledge." Tony stared at Nezu. "Why are you enabling her?" Nezu smiled. "Because she will follow you anyway, and it is safer if we know where she is." Tony's shoulders dropped. "Fair." Then Deku tried to come. He didn't ask loud. He asked politely. Too politely. Like he knew the answer would be no. "I want to learn," Deku said, eyes bright. "If your suit can help rescue people, it could change." "No," Tony said immediately. Deku blinked. "Oh." Tony kept his voice steady. "You're a kid." Deku's face fell a little. "I'm training to be a hero." Tony's voice softened, just a fraction. "And that's insane. So you're not coming into a situation where villains might hit the facility." Aizawa's eyes flicked to Tony. He didn't agree with Tony often, but on this, he did. Deku nodded, disappointed but understanding. Tony pointed at him. "You can study after, with permission, in safe rooms. I'll answer your questions." Deku nodded again, writing already, like he could store disappointment on paper and turn it into fuel. Bakugo heard about the trip and scoffed. "Whatever. If the metal guy gets jumped, he deserves it." Todoroki said nothing. Hawk sent a message through official channels asking for the exact time and route, which felt polite and also like surveillance. Endeavor didn't ask anything. That worried Tony the most. The day of the trip arrived. Tony flew low and controlled over the city, escorted by pro-heroes and police drones. He wore full armor, helmet on, systems tight. Aizawa rode in a vehicle below, not because he needed it, but because he wanted to be on the ground where he could control the situation. May sat in the back of the same vehicle, bouncing her knee, grinning like she was going to a theme park. "This is going to be amazing," she said. Aizawa didn't look at her. "If you touch anything without permission, I will throw you into a wall." May nodded fast. "Okay." Tony heard it through comms and muttered, "Why is this my life?" Friday replied, calm as ever. "Sir, your life has always included chaos." Tony couldn't argue. They reached the facility, a heavy gray building with layered fences, armed security, and thick doors. It wasn't pretty. It was meant to endure. Tony liked that. A manager in a suit greeted them with a practiced smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Welcome. We are honored to assist OA and Mr. Stark." Tony's helmet tilted. Just Tony. The manager nodded like he'd already decided not to. They moved inside. The testing bay was huge. Thick walls, reinforced floors, machines that could bend steel. Tony stepped into the center and felt the familiar comfort of a place built for work. He opened his forearm panel and began to set up his lock system. He placed small devices around the suit like tiny anchors. Each one held a piece of his code and a piece of his identity. Biometrics, timing patterns, Friday's handshake checks. May leaned over a console, eyes shining. "This is so clean," she whispered. "So layered, so paranoid." Tony didn't look up. "I prefer prepared." Aizawa scanned every corner of the room. He didn't care about the tech beauty. He cared about the doors and the shadows. Friday's voice shifted. "Sir, I am detecting multiple unfamiliar devices in the building's network." Tony froze. "Define unfamiliar." "Not part of facility systems," Friday said. "Small, hidden, recently activated." Aizawa heard Tony's tone change and stepped closer. "What is it?" Tony's voice went low. "Someone planted eyes in here." May's grin faded for the first time. "Like, spies?" Tony didn't answer. He turned his helmet toward the ceiling corners, scanning, and then the lights went out. Not a normal blackout, a clean, planned drop. Emergency red light snapped on a beat later. Sirens did not start. That meant someone wanted silence. Aizawa's eyes flashed red. Everyone stay alert. May swallowed. Okay. The facility manager spoke quickly, too quickly. This is an unexpected power issue. Tony's sensors caught movement in the walls. Not in the room. Around it. Friday spoke sharply. Sir, multiple intruders. 2 groups. One approaching from the west access corridor, another from below. Tony's stomach tightened. 2 groups. Aizawa's voice was flat. They're splitting our attention. Tony's helmet turned toward the main door. Then we don't split. We pick the bigger danger and control the rest. Aizawa glanced at him. Which is? Tony didn't hesitate. Anyone who can touch my reactor. May whispered. Your shiny chest thing? Tony replied. Yes. The west door blew inward. Not with fire. With shaped charges placed to cut metal clean. Like someone knew exactly how to enter a tech bay without collapsing it. Smoke rolled in. Then men and women in tactical gear rushed through, carrying shock batons and strange tools designed to rip armor apart. Not quirk fighters. Tech fighters. Redestro's kind. One of them shouted, "Take the lock device. Take the core data." Tony's eyes narrowed. Of course you did your homework. He moved. The suit shot forward and hit the first attacker with a shoulder check that sent them skidding across the floor. Tony didn't crush bones. He aimed for knockouts. He fired a pulse that magnetized the floor under 2 attackers, locking their boots for half a second. Enough for Aizawa's scarf to whip out and slam them down. Aizawa's eyes glowed red. Any quirk users among them lost their edge instantly. May ducked behind a console, then peeked out like a goblin in a lab coat. Can I throw something? No, Tony said. May grabbed a wrench anyway. Okay, but I'm holding it. Another wave of attackers rushed Tony with clamps that looked like they could bite through steel. Tony boosted up, flipped, and landed behind them. He fired a short burst into the clamps, overheating them so they warped and snapped. Nice try, Tony said. Then the floor shook, not from the west door. From below, a crack spread across the testing bay floor like a spider web. Tony's head snapped down. Friday? The low team has reached the foundation, Friday said. They are using a quirk or tool to weaken structure. Aizawa's eyes narrowed. They want us to fall. Tony looked toward May. Stay behind the thick console. Do not move. May nodded fast, clutching her wrench like a security blanket. Then the floor broke open. A hole tore upward, throwing chunks of concrete into the air. Out of that hole climbed a man with messy hair, dry lips, and hands that looked like they wanted to touch everything. Shigaraki. His eyes locked onto Tony's chest like he could see the reactor through metal. He smiled. Found you, he said. Tony had no context for Shigaraki's name, but his suit screamed danger anyway. The air around Shigaraki felt wrong, like contact itself was death. Aizawa's voice turned sharp. Do not let him touch you. Tony replied, not planning to. Shigaraki stepped forward, hand out. The floor under his fingers started to crumble as he touched it. Concrete turned to dust in a spreading wave. Tony's eyes widened. Okay, that's new. He boosted up immediately, rising out of reach. Shigaraki's decay spread across the ground, eating the floor in a fast line. Tech attackers from the west hesitated as their boots began to sink into crumbling concrete. They shouted and scrambled back. Shigaraki didn't care about them. He cared about Tony. He looked up and tilted his head. Fly all you want, he said. I just need one touch. Tony's mind raced. If this guy got a grip on the suit might crumble. If the suit crumbled around the reactor could be exposed. And then villains could take it. Tony fired a repulsor blast at Shigaraki's chest. Shigaraki slid back, feet scraping. He didn't fall. His grin stayed. Aizawa's eyes burned. He stared at Shigaraki hard. Shigaraki's decay stopped spreading for a moment. Shigaraki's grin twitched. Oh, you. I hate you. Aizawa's voice was cold. Then stop moving, Shigaraki's body tensed. He pushed forward anyway, like he was forcing his own muscles to ignore the loss of power. Tony understood instantly. Shigaraki could still fight without the quirk for a moment. He was dangerous either way. From the west, more tech fighters surged, trying to reach Tony's lock devices. Tony realized the trap. Redestro's people wanted the lock system. Shigaraki wanted the reactor. Two villains, one prize, different plans, same result. Tony spoke into comms. Aizawa, keep eyes on Decay Guy. I'm going to clear the tech team fast. Aizawa's voice stayed steady. Do it. Tony moved like a machine built for speed. He fired micro-missiles into the ceiling beams above the west corridor. Not explosive, just binding. They burst into hard foam cords that dropped like nets, tangling attackers in place. He followed with a wide electric pulse that overloaded their tools. One attacker pulled out a device and slammed it onto Tony's leg. The device sparked and tried to clamp. Tony grimaced. Really? He tore it off and crushed it in his fist. May squealed from behind the console. That was so cool. Tony shouted back, Not now. Bakugo would have loved this kind of fight. Tony thought for a second. Then he hated himself for thinking about a kid in a fight zone. He refocused. He split his armor. Not fully, just in parts. A pair of shoulder plates detached and flew as remote drones, spinning around Shigaraki like angry shields. They fired small pulses, forcing Shigaraki to keep moving and keep looking up. Shigaraki snapped at them, trying to grab. But he couldn't reach them cleanly. Tony kept distance, always distance. Aizawa stayed locked on Shigaraki with his eyes, sweat already starting to form. Keeping Erasure active took focus. Shigaraki lunged anyway, hand out, teeth clenched like a rabid animal. Aizawa's scarf snapped, wrapping Shigaraki's wrist and yanking it back before it could touch the floor again. Shigaraki snarled and twisted, trying to pull Aizawa in close. Tony fired a precise beam that cut the scarf loose at the right point so it didn't get decayed. Aizawa stumbled back, annoyed but alive. Careful, Tony said. I was, Aizawa replied, breathing hard. Shigaraki laughed, scraping his fingers along the ground just enough to make the concrete crumble. The floor began to fail under them. Tony's HUD flashed structural warnings. Friday, Tony said. How long before this whole bay drops? 68 seconds, Friday answered. Tony's heart kicked. Okay, new plan. He looked at Aizawa. We need to get everyone out. Now. Aizawa's eyes flicked to May. Hatsume, move. May squeaked and crawled out from behind the console, clutching her wrench and a small device she clearly stole from the table. Tony didn't have time to yell at her. He boosted down, grabbed May by the back of her jumpsuit like a cat, and lifted her up. May didn't even scream. She just shouted, "Wee!" Tony shoved her toward the exit with a gentle toss. Run. Aizawa pulled two trapped facility workers toward the door. Tony fired another foam net at the tech attackers, then blew the west corridor door closed with a quick weld beam, sealing them in. Not forever, just long enough. Shigaraki saw Tony's movement and understood. His eyes widened. No, Shigaraki hissed. Don't you run from me. He lunged straight at Tony, hand out like a spear. Tony boosted backward, and something hit him from the side. A tech attacker, half free, tackled his leg like a desperate animal. Tony's balance slipped. Shigaraki's fingers came within inches of Tony's shin. Tony's blood ran cold. He fired straight down. The blast wasn't aimed to hurt Shigaraki. It was aimed to throw Tony up and away. The shock knocked the attacker off and sent Tony flying into the air. Shigaraki's fingers raked the air beneath him. Missed. Tony didn't relax. He didn't celebrate. He rocketed toward the ceiling, then slammed into a controlled hover above the collapsing floor. Everybody out, he shouted. Aizawa backed through the door, still staring at Shigaraki until the last possible second. When he broke eye contact, Shigaraki's decay returned at full force. The floor finally gave up. The bay dropped in a violent crash, swallowing Shigaraki and the trapped attackers into dust and darkness. Tony hovered above the hole, breathing hard. Friday's voice was tight. Sir. Multiple heat signatures have survived the fall. Tony's eyes narrowed. Of course they did. He scanned for May. She was at the hallway corner, half behind a wall, holding her wrench and that stolen device. Tony pointed at her like a weapon. May. May froze. Yes? What did you take? May smiled nervously. A little part of the lock tester. Just a tiny one. For research. Tony's stomach sank. Aizawa stepped in front of May, blocking Tony's anger with his own presence. Later. Tony's voice was low. We're in later because everyone keeps taking things now. Nezu's voice came through comms. We have incoming reports. Multiple attacks are happening across the facility grounds. Tony's head snapped up. Not just here? Not just here, Nezu confirmed. Tony realized the full shape of the trap. This was never only about him. It was about shaking trust in systems, making heroes look weak, making you, look unsafe, making the public demand control. Tony's fists clenched. Shigaraki's voice floated up from the hole. Faint but clear, like a promise. I'm coming for your heart, he called, laughing. Tony stared down into the darkness. His voice was quiet. Try. The fight didn't end cleanly. By the time heroes secured the facility, several attackers were captured. Some escaped. The manager was found tied up in a back room, either a victim or a bad actor who got double-crossed. Nobody was sure yet. What Tony knew was simpler. Someone had studied him. Someone had used 2 different villain groups to squeeze him from both sides. And they had almost won. Back at you. The aftermath hit like a second punch. The commission called within hours, angry and loud. They claimed the incident proved Tony's tech was a public threat. Nezu handled them with polite words and sharp limits. Aizawa filed reports. So many reports. Tony stared at the new stack of paperwork on his lab table and felt his eye twitch. He walked to the stack, raised his hand, and fired a tiny repulsor pulse. Not enough to burn. Just enough to scatter papers across the room like snow. Aizawa walked in and saw it. He didn't react. He just stepped over a page and said, "Pick it up." Tony stared. No. Aizawa's eyes narrowed. Pick it up. Tony sighed like a man losing a war to a pen. Fine. He picked up the papers. May sat on a stool in the corner, whispering. That was kind of iconic. Tony pointed at her without looking. If you ever take my parts again, I'm building a lock for you too. May smiled. A friendship lock? Tony finally looked at her. A jail lock. May nodded. Still cute. Tony couldn't win, but he could build. That night, after everyone else left, Tony sat alone in the lab with Friday's voice in his ear. Sir, Friday said softly, you came within 0.23 seconds of decay contact. Tony's throat tightened. Yeah. If contact occurred, Friday continued, armor integrity would likely have failed. Tony stared at his own hands, bare now. Human hands. Not strong. Not special. Then we make sure it never happens again, Tony whispered. He opened the lock system code and added new layers. More checks. More traps. More deadman switches that only he could trigger. It was smart. It was also scary, because he knew the truth Aizawa hinted at. Worry could push you into control. Tony typed anyway. Out in the city, the story grew bigger than he wanted. People now whispered a new name for him. Not Iron Man. Not Tony Stark. They called him something simpler. The Metal Hero. And every hero, every villain, and every person with power heard that name and made plans. Tony leaned back in his chair, tired. He looked at the armor standing in the corner like a silent guard. I didn't come here to change your world, he said quietly. Friday replied, Sir, it appears your arrival is already changing it. Tony exhaled. Yeah, he said. So now I choose what kind of change. He stood up, and he went back to work. Weeks passed, but the campus did not forget the sound of the floor breaking open at the testing facility. Did what it always did after a disaster. It trained harder. Tony did what he always did after a disaster. He built. His days started early. He would be in the support lab before most students finished breakfast. He wore the suit less often now, but the armor parts were always close. He worked on the lock system in layers, like he was building a wall out of invisible bricks. He wrote code. He tested parts until they failed. Then he rebuilt them better. And every single day, somebody brought him more paperwork. It became a routine so steady it almost felt like a joke the universe refused to stop telling. Aizawa would walk in, toss a folder on the table, and say, "Sign." Tony would look at it like it was poison and say, "I saved a bus full of kids with a laser, and you people still want my signature in triplicate." Aizawa would answer the same way every time, "Yes." One morning, Tony tried to solve it. He built a small, neat machine the size of a lunchbox. It had a little screen, a stamp arm, and a pen holder. He placed it on the table like he was proud of it. Nezu stared at it. Mei stared at it like it was a baby animal. Aizawa stared at it like it was a trap. Tony cleared his throat. "Meet the form filler 3000. It reads, signs, stamps, and files your nonsense. Fast, clean, nobody gets hurt." Mei clapped. "I love it." Nezu smiled. "It is charming." Aizawa's eyes narrowed. "No." Tony blinked. "No?" Aizawa pointed to the stack of papers. "You will read what you sign." Tony groaned. "You're the villain here." Aizawa didn't react. "Read." Tony picked up the first form and muttered, "I hate this planet." Mei leaned closer and whispered, "Can I upgrade it to shoot glitter stamps?" Tony looked at her. "If you touch it, I will personally throw it into the sun." Mei nodded, happy. "That's fair." So the form filler 3000 stayed unused, and the paperwork stack stayed alive. That part never changed. What did change was the way you, moved around Tony now. In the first week, people watched him like he might explode. By the third week, they watched him like he might be the difference between life and death. Tony did rescue drills with the staff. Not flashy stuff, real stuff. How to find trapped people in smoke. How to use barriers to guide a crowd. How to listen for a weak wall before it collapses. How to spot a signal jammer before it blinds your tools. He built simple, safe gadgets for practice. Tiny trackers that stuck to villain gear. Cheap drones that could map a building in seconds. Clip-on sensors that could warn a hero when a room was too hot to enter. He refused to build weapons for them. He said it clearly, every time. Rescue tech, defense tech, medical tech, not weapons. Some heroes respected that. Some didn't like it. Endeavor didn't say much anymore, but his eyes always stayed on Tony's chest plate, like he was measuring how far Tony's power was from his own. Hawks was friendlier. Too friendly. He would lean against a wall, smile, and ask questions that sounded casual but were never casual. "So how do you keep the suit stable at that speed? Do you always run your own targeting? If you had to stop a copycat, what would you do?" Tony always answered with the same kind of answer. Carefully. And he watched Hawks right back. Because Tony knew spies. He knew charming people with soft voices and sharp jobs. Izuku Midoriya became the one student Tony didn't push away. Not because Tony wanted a kid in danger. Because Deku kept showing up with the same thing Tony respected more than a quirk. Work. Deku would come with a notebook full of neat writing and ask simple questions. Why did you choose a wide shield instead of a strong one? How do you decide when to use force? What do you do when the enemy wants you to chase them? Tony would answer in short, clear lines. Wide shields save more people. Force is a tool, it is not the point. When someone wants you to chase them, ask what they want you to leave behind. Deku wrote everything down like it mattered. And it did. Tony watched you. It's training sometimes. Not close. Not like a coach screaming. He watched like a man trying to understand a world that raised kids to fight. Bakugo hated him at first. Then Bakugo started respecting one thing Tony did better than almost anyone. Control. Tony didn't waste movement. He didn't waste energy. He didn't waste time. Bakugo didn't say it out loud, but Tony could see it in the way Bakugo's eyes tracked the suit when Tony flew. Todoroki barely spoke to Tony, But he listened. He always listened. And Aizawa watched everyone. Aizawa watched Tony most of all. One afternoon, Nezu called Tony into his office. It was the same office where Nezu looked small and harmless, and still felt like the most dangerous mind in the room. Aizawa was there. Hawks was there too, perched like he belonged. And the commission woman was there again. She didn't sit like a guest. She sat like an owner. Tony stood. He didn't sit until Nezu gestured to a chair. Nezu's voice was calm. "We have a request." Tony looked at the commission woman. "You have a demand." The woman didn't blink. "Your technology has already attracted villain attacks. It has endangered students. It has created public panic." Tony's jaw tightened. "And I stopped a monster in the street. And I stopped thieves on campus. And I stopped Shigaraki from touching a kid." Her eyes stayed cold. "That does not change the risk." Hawks's wings shifted slightly. He didn't speak, but his eyes were on Tony's face like he was reading every twitch. The woman slid a folder forward. A proposed arrangement. Tony didn't touch it. Nezu opened it anyway and read out the clean parts. A national technology division. Stark is a consultant under commission control. Full inspection of suit systems. Technology transfer for duplication and distribution. Tony's stomach went tight. The words were polite. The meaning was simple. Give them the keys. Tony looked at Nezu. "And if I say no?" The commission woman answered. "Then your permit is revoked. Your presence becomes illegal." Tony leaned back slowly. "So you're going to punish me for not letting you copy me?" Aizawa's voice was low. "This is why I warned you." Tony didn't look away. "I know." Hawks finally spoke, voice light. "They're afraid, Tony. It's not personal." Tony's eyes flicked to Hawks. "It's always personal when someone tries to take what you built." Hawks' smile softened, but his gaze stayed sharp. "Maybe, but fear makes people do dumb things." Tony nodded once. "Yeah, that's why I'm not giving them a weapon factory." The commission woman's tone sharpened. "Your refusal will create chaos." Tony leaned forward. "Chaos is already here. The question is who gets to aim it." Nezu held up a paw again, gentle but firm. "Tony, the commission is not asking because they like asking. They are asking because they believe control is the only way." Tony's voice turned quiet. "And I know what happens when control becomes the goal." Aizawa watched him. He didn't ask. He already knew Tony had lived through it. Tony stood up. "Here's my offer." The woman's eyes narrowed. "You are not in a position to offer." Tony didn't flinch. "I am. Because you can't take the suit without starting a war you don't want." Silence hit the room like a wall. Tony kept going, voice steady. "I will share rescue tech. Crowd shields, emergency mapping drones, medical scanners. Stuff that saves lives. No weapons, no arc reactor, no suit blueprints, no mass production." The commission woman's lips tightened. "Unacceptable." Nezu's smile faded just a little. "It is more than we expected." The woman turned toward Nezu. "Principal, this is not your decision." Nezu's voice stayed calm, but it carried weight. "UA is responsible for the safety of its students. I will not allow forced technology seizure on our grounds." Aizawa's eyes stayed flat. "Try it and you'll have a problem." Hawks exhaled softly, like he was watching a collision he couldn't stop. The woman stood. "Then we will proceed through legal channels." Tony's mouth twisted. "More paperwork. Great." She left without another word. When the door shut, Nezu looked at Tony. "Are you prepared for what comes next?" Nezu asked. Tony's voice was simple. "They'll push harder." Aizawa nodded once. "And villains will push too." Tony stared at the floor for a moment. He thought of the piece of armor stolen in the city. He thought of Shigaraki's fingers reaching up. He thought of the way the commission woman looked at him like a box of parts. Then he looked up. "I'm prepared," Tony said. "I just hate that I have to be." That night, Tony didn't go back to his lab right away. He went to the training field when it was empty. He stood in the dark grass and looked up at the stars. They weren't his stars. Friday's voice whispered in his ear. "Sir, you have been silent for 3 minutes." Tony's mouth tightened. "I'm thinking." About the commission, Friday said. And about the villains, Tony replied. He took a slow breath. And about how I'm stuck in a world where a government wants to own my tech and a monster wants to steal my heart. Friday paused. Your chest reactor, sir. Tony snorted. Yeah, that one. Thanks. He turned and began walking back toward campus. Then every screen on the far side of the field lit up at once. Not just one. All of them. They didn't show ads. They showed a black background. A simple white symbol appeared, like a smiling face drawn wrong. Then a voice came through the speakers. Smooth, calm, friendly in the way a snake might be friendly. Tony Stark. Tony froze. His skin went cold. Because he knew that tone. He'd heard it from men who wore suits and called themselves saviors. He'd heard it from monsters who hid behind smiles. The voice continued. You are far from home. You are surrounded by children. You are watched by fearful people who do not understand you. Tony's fists clenched. The voice sounded like it was speaking right next to his ear, even though it came from speakers. I can end your problem, the voice said. Give me your technology. Give me your lock. Give me your power, and I will make this world quiet. Tony's jaw tightened. Who are you? A soft laugh came through. You already know, the voice replied. Even if you do not know my name here. Tony's suit pieces were not on him. He was in civilian clothes. He felt exposed. But he didn't run. He stared at the screens and spoke loud enough for cameras. I don't make deals with terrorists. The voice stayed calm. You are not thinking clearly. You want control. You want safety. You want to stop people from getting hurt. Tony's throat tightened, because it was true. The voice pressed on. You are building a lock because you fear your power will be used against innocent people. I can help you. Together, we can control everything. Tony felt anger rise. Not hot, cold. He stepped closer to the screen. No, Tony said, voice low. Control is not the same as good. The voice sighed like a patient teacher. Then you will learn the hard way. The screens went black. Friday's voice was sharp now. Sir, that signal did not originate from a local broadcast tower. It piggybacked multiple networks at once. Tony swallowed. So he can reach anywhere. Yes, Friday said. And he chose to reach you. Tony stood still in the dark. He didn't feel like a hero. He felt like a target. He turned and walked fast toward the support lab. Friday, he said. Open every sensor log, every drone feed, every network ping from the last month. Sir, Friday warned, that will increase detection risk. Tony didn't slow. I don't care. He reached the lab and began suiting up piece by piece. Not for show. For war. The attack came 2 days later. Not at midnight. Not in a hidden alley. In daylight. Because the point wasn't only to steal. The point was to scare. It started in the city, not on campus. A crowded transit center near Musatafu's main line. People waiting. Kids holding hands. Workers staring at phones. Then the floor cracked. A monster rose up through concrete like it was paper. It wasn't a normal Nomu. This one had armor plates on its shoulders and chest. Plates Tony recognized instantly. Not his suit, but his stolen metal, reshaped, bolted on, and wired to something ugly. The monster roared, and its voice came with a harsh electronic buzz, like a speaker inside a throat. People screamed and ran. A second monster appeared on the far end, and then a third. Above them, small drones swarmed into the air like angry birds. They fired small blasts, not strong enough to kill, but strong enough to push crowds into panic. Tony's comms lit up with noise. Multiple threats. Evacuation failing. Drones interfering with emergency routes. Tony was already in the air. He flew low over buildings, seeing smoke, hearing sirens. All Might's voice came over the channel, steady but urgent. Stark, civilians are trapped in the lower platform. Can you reach them? Tony's voice was tight. On it. Aizawa's voice cut in. Those drones are using tech patterns similar to yours. Tony's stomach clenched. I know. Then the commission voice broke through, furious. "Stark, stand down. This is a security operation." Tony didn't even answer. He dove toward the transit center. As he came in, he saw the chaos clearly. One monster had blocked the main exit with its bulk. Another monster slammed the walls, trying to collapse the ceiling. The drones forced people away from open paths and toward dead ends. It was planned. It was cruel. Tony's mind ran fast. He didn't have time to fight for pride. He had to fight for flow. He fired 2 wide shields, one on each side of the crowd, guiding them like walls guiding water. "Move this way," he shouted through his suit speakers. "Stay low, follow the barrier." People didn't understand the words at first, but they understood the light wall that protected them from falling debris. They ran along it. Tony sent drones down into the lower level. They mapped heat signatures and found pockets of trapped people. Friday spoke fast. "Lower platform has 62 civilians, 2 stairwells blocked, 1 access tunnel still open, but drones are herding crowds away from it." Tony's eyes narrowed. "Then we cut the drones." He aimed one palm at the swarm. Then he stopped himself. If he blasted them, pieces could hit people below. He needed precision. Tony fired a narrow beam that sliced the wing of one drone. It fell straight into his shield, not into the crowd. He repeated it, one by one. Not fast enough. The swarm shifted and started to circle him. Then a new sound hit the air. A deep, heavy punch sound. All Might landed in the center of the transit yard with a shockwave that cracked the concrete. The monsters turned toward him like animals sensing a bigger animal. All Might didn't waste time talking. He grabbed the nearest armored Nomu by the head and slammed it into the ground. The armored plates held for a moment, then bent. Tony's eyes widened behind his mask. Even with armor, even with upgrades, a Nomu was still facing a living storm. But the armor did one thing. It slowed All Might just enough to make the fight dangerous around civilians. All Might knew it too. His moves were controlled, measured. He hit like a hammer wrapped in care. A drone tried to fire at All Might's face. Bakugo exploded into the air from the side, blasting the drone into scrap. "Don't aim at him!" Bakugo shouted, furious. Todoroki followed, ice spreading over the ground under another drone cluster, freezing their landing options. Hawks sliced through 2 drones midair with feathers like blades. Endeavor arrived like a furnace, flames curling around his arms. He glared at the armored Nomu and said, "You want to wear armor? Fine." He blasted heat so intense the air shimmered, and the metal plates began to glow. But the plates didn't melt. They were designed to resist heat. Tony's stomach dropped again. They used his metal because it could take punishment. Aizawa landed on a high platform, eyes already glowing red. He looked down at the Nomu and locked his stare. The Nomu slowed, then shook and pushed forward anyway, like Shigaraki had. Aizawa's face tightened. They are built to fight through erasure. Tony's voice went low. "Of course they are." Friday's voice cut in. "Sir, I detect a broadcast signal inside the drone swarm. It is carrying commands." Tony's mind snapped into place. It wasn't only stolen metal. It was stolen patterns. His patterns? Whoever built these copies didn't need perfect blueprints. They needed enough to mimic the way his tech spoke. Tony could use that. He opened a panel in his wrist and armed something he hadn't wanted to use yet. A shutdown pulse. Not a weapon. A key. If he used it, it would try to shake hands with any Stark-like circuit nearby and force it to freeze. It could stop the drones. It could stop the armored plates. It might also hit his own suit for a second if the timing was wrong. And 1 second in a battlefield could be death. Tony's heart beat hard. He looked at the crowd, still moving behind his shield walls. He saw a child stumble. A stranger lifted the child and kept running. He saw a hero pull a door open with brute strength. He saw All Might take a hit that dented the earth. Tony made his choice. "Friday," he said. "Sync my suit to ignore the pulse. Give me a half-second window." Friday's voice tightened. "Sir, that is not guaranteed." Tony's jaw clenched. "Do it." "Understood," Friday said. Tony rose higher, gaining a wide view. He saw the drone swarm as a moving cloud. He saw the armored Nomu as anchors of chaos. He saw the crowd flow as something fragile that could break if panic hit again. Tony opened a public channel, voice loud. "All heroes," he said, "when I say down, get low and cover your eyes. I'm going to flash the sky." Bakugo's voice snapped back. "What are you doing, Tin Man?" Tony replied, "Saving your city. Down means down." All Might looked up for a fraction of a second, then nodded. He trusted Tony. That trust hit Tony harder than any punch. Tony counted in his head. 3, 2, 1. "Down," Tony shouted. He triggered the pulse. A clean wave shot out from his suit, invisible at first, then visible as a thin ripple in the air. The drone swarm stuttered in mid-flight. One drone fell, then 5, then 20, like birds losing the rules of the sky. The armored plates on the Nomu flickered with tiny lights, then went dark. The monsters roared, confused, still strong, but suddenly less coordinated. Tony's HUD flickered too. For half a second, his own suit system slowed, like a heartbeat skipping. Tony's stomach dropped. Then Friday's sync caught. Systems snapped back online. Tony exhaled hard. He didn't let himself relax. Because the battlefield changed instantly, and villains always had a second trick. The platform beneath Aizawa cracked. A hand shot up from a broken section of concrete. Not Shigaraki. Someone else. A villain with a quirk that warped the ground like soft clay. They grabbed Aizawa's ankle. Aizawa's balance broke. His eyes flickered off the Nomu for 1 second. The Nomu surged forward with full quirk power back in its body. It swung at All Might. All Might blocked, but the hit was heavy. He slid back, boots digging trenches. Tony's mind snapped. "Bakugo!" Tony shouted. "Left platform! Aizawa!" Bakugo didn't hesitate. He blasted sideways, caught Aizawa's fall path with a controlled explosion burst, and shoved him back onto stable ground. Aizawa's eyes relocked on the villain below. The villain's quirk died. Hawks dove and snagged the villain by the collar with feathers, yanking them out of the rubble. Todoroki sealed the broken platform with ice in seconds. Endeavor surged forward with a roar and grabbed the weakened Nomu, flames and force combining. All Might used the opening. He didn't hit the Nomu in the face. He hit the ground under it with a controlled upward blast of strength, popping the monster off balance. Then he hit its chest with one clean punch that carried enough power to end the fight without tearing the station apart. The Nomu flew backward and slammed into a reinforced wall. The wall cracked. The Nomu stopped moving. Not dead, but down. Tony dove to the lower platform access. His drones guided civilians through the last open tunnel. He landed at the tunnel mouth and held a shield up as debris fell behind them like hail. A mother ran past him, clutching a child. She looked up at the red and gold armor and didn't scream this time. She just said, "Thank you," and kept running. Tony swallowed. His throat felt tight inside the helmet. He kept the shield up until the last civilian was out. Then he dropped it and turned back toward the fight. Smoke still rose, but the drone swarm was dead in the air. The armored plates were dark. The biggest chaos was fading. And in the middle of it all, a voice crackled through a broken station speaker. Smooth, calm, patient. "You see," the voice said, "they fear you. They want to chain you. They will always want control." Tony froze. All Might's head turned slightly, listening. Aizawa's eyes narrowed, scanning for the source. The voice continued, "Give me what you built, Tony Stark, and you will never need to watch children bleed again." Tony's hands curled into fists. He didn't look at the speaker. He looked at Deku. Deku stood behind a broken pillar with other students who had been helping evacuate under pro supervision. He should not have been that close. But disasters didn't care about rules. Deku's face was pale. His hands shook. But he was still standing, still watching, still learning. Tony stepped toward the speaker, voice loud and clear. "No," Tony said. The voice paused, like it didn't expect that answer so fast. Tony kept going. "You're offering me control. You're offering me a world where nobody can hurt anybody. Because you hold the leash. His voice went colder. That's not peace. That's a cage. The voice sounded almost sad. Then you choose pain. Tony stared at the smoking station, at the broken concrete, at the people crying, at the heroes sweating and bleeding and still moving. I choose people, Tony said. He raised his palm and fired one small blast. Not at a person, at the speaker. It shattered. Silence fell, broken only by sirens and distant shouts. Hawks landed near Tony and studied him. That was him, Hawk said quietly. Tony nodded. Yeah. All Might stepped closer, breathing heavy, smile smaller. A villain leader. A patient one, Tony replied. Aizawa's voice was flat. All for one. Tony's stomach tightened at the name, like it belonged to a story that always ended badly. He looked at Aizawa. He wants my tech. Aizawa stared back. He wants anything that gives him advantage. Tony glanced toward the city skyline. Then he's not done. Nezu's voice came through comms. Reports confirm similar attacks in 2 other districts. Not as large. Likely diversions. Tony's eyes narrowed. Diversions for what? Friday answered before anyone else could. Sir, I am detecting a signal sweep directed at your suit systems. It is searching for your shutdown pulse signature. Tony's blood ran cold. He used the key. Now they knew it existed. And if they could copy it, they could use it against him. Tony turned his head slowly, scanning the rooftops. He didn't see the enemy, but he felt the enemy learning. Tony's voice was quiet now, only on comms. We shut them down once. We can do it again. Aizawa answered. If you can keep your tech from becoming their tool. Tony's jaw clenched. That's the fight. The cleanup took hours. Civilians were safe. Injuries happened, but it wasn't a massacre. That mattered. The heroes won the day. But nobody felt like it was over. Back at you. Hey. That night, Tony stood in his lab and stared at his suit like it was a person he needed to argue with. May sat on a chair, unusually quiet, holding a little device she'd built from scrap metal and pure stubbornness. Aizawa stood in the doorway like he lived there now. Nezu's voice came through a speaker in the room. He didn't come in. He gave Tony space. Tony finally broke the silence. They're going to try to copy my key, he said. Friday replied, yes, sir. Aizawa's voice stayed flat. Then stop using it. Tony snapped his head toward Aizawa. If I stop using it, their copies get free movement. Aizawa didn't blink. Then improve it. Tony exhaled. That's what I'm doing. May lifted her device. I made a signal decoy. Tony blinked. You did what? May held it out, nervous but proud. It looks like your shutdown pulse. But it's fake. If they scan for it, they find this instead. Tony stared at the device. It was simple, not perfect, but clever. He took it slowly. May flinched, expecting a yell. Tony didn't yell. He just said, that's good work. May's eyes went wide. Really? Tony nodded once. Really? Aizawa watched Tony's face like he was checking for lies. Tony didn't look away. Don't get used to it. May grinned anyway. Nezu spoke through the speaker, gentle. Tony, the commission has requested your presence tomorrow. Tony's mouth tightened. Of course they have. Nezu continued. They want to push harder now. They will claim your tech caused the escalation. Tony laughed, tired and sharp. They'll blame the tool, not the hand holding the knife. Aizawa's voice stayed cold. They want you under their control. Tony looked down at the fake decoy in his hand, then at his suit. His flaw sat in his chest like a stone. He wanted to fix everything. He wanted to close every door villains could use. He wanted the world to stop hurting people. And part of him believed the fastest way was control. Tony closed his eyes for a second. Then he opened them and made a choice that hurt. He turned toward Nezu's speaker. Tell the commission this, Tony said. I'm not joining them. I'm not handing over my suit, and I'm not leaving UA. Nezu's voice was calm. That is a strong stance. Tony's voice stayed steady. I'll give them rescue tech like I offered. That's it. Aizawa watched him. And when they come anyway? Tony looked at Aizawa. Then we make sure the public sees the truth. Aizawa's eyes narrowed. The truth doesn't always win. Tony's mouth twisted. Then we fight smarter. He turned back to the suit and opened a new file in his system. A new layer. Not a weapon. A promise. A silent switch that could shut down any tech built from his stolen patterns anywhere in range without harming ordinary devices. A last resort. A line he hoped never to cross. He named the file with a simple word. Responsibility. The next day, Tony didn't go to the commission office. Nezu went. Aizawa went. Hawks went. Tony stayed at U.A., building rescue gear and training plans. It was a statement without a speech. And it worked. For now. Because the commission didn't move openly after that. They moved quietly. And villains moved quietly too. But there was one thing Tony didn't miss. The city's reaction started to shift. When people saw him in the sky now, fewer screamed. Some still did. Some still hated him. But some pointed and said, "That's the metal hero." Not as a threat. As a warning sign to villains. As a hope sign to civilians. Tony didn't like titles. But he liked what the title meant in their mouths. It meant they believed he might show up. It meant they believed someone would. All Might spoke with Tony later that week on a rooftop. The wind pulled at All Might's cape. Tony's hair was messy. All Might's smile was gentle. "You refused the villain's offer," he said. Tony snorted. "I'm not joining Team Evil." All Might chuckled softly, then grew serious. "He offered to remove pain." Tony's eyes tightened. "He offered to remove choice." All Might nodded. "Yes." Tony looked down at the campus. Students trained in the distance. Small figures. Big dreams. "This world is weird," Tony said quietly. "You make kids carry heavy stuff." All Might's smile faded. "I wish it were different." Tony's voice was low. "So do I." All Might looked at him. "Then stay." Tony blinked. "That's not—" All Might cut in gently. "Not forever. Not as a prisoner. Not as an asset. Stay as yourself. As an ally." Tony stared at him. He thought of home. He thought of being pulled across the sky, falling into a world he didn't choose. He thought of a mother saying thank you in a smoke-filled tunnel. He thought of Deku's notebook. He thought of Shigaraki's voice saying, "I'm coming for your heart." Tony exhaled. "All right," he said. "I'll stay." All Might's smile returned, small but real. "Thank you." Tony's mouth twitched. "Don't thank me yet. I still have 3 stacks of forms waiting." All Might laughed, loud and bright, and for a second the world felt lighter. Night returned to U.A., like it always did. Quiet halls, distant city noise, soft lights in the support building. Tony went to the rooftop alone. He held a small recorder device in one hand. Not a phone, not a broadcast, just a private tool. Friday's voice was soft. "Sir, would you like me to store the message?" Tony nodded once. "Yeah." He stared out at the city. He didn't try to sound brave. He didn't try to sound funny. He just spoke. "Hey," he said, voice rough. "If this ever reaches anywhere, it's Tony." He paused. "I'm not home. I don't know if I can get back. I'm working on it, but—" He swallowed. "It's complicated." He looked down at his hands. "I landed in a world where almost everyone has powers. They call them quirks. They train kids to be heroes." His voice tightened for a second. "That part still makes me mad." He breathed out. "But they're brave. They run toward danger. They don't always win. Sometimes they get hurt. And they still show up." He stared at the skyline. "There's a villain here who wants control. There's a government here that thinks control is safety. And there's me, stuck in the middle, trying not to become what they fear." He stopped, because his throat felt tight again. Then he said the simplest truth he had. "I'm going to keep protecting people. I'm going to keep my tech locked down. And if my work becomes a danger to this world—" He paused. "I'll be the one to shut it down." Friday didn't speak. Tony lowered the recorder. For a moment he just stood there in the cold air. A soft sound came from the rooftop door behind him. Tony turned fast, half ready to fight. It was Deku. Deku froze when he saw Tony's face. "I'm sorry," Deku said quickly. "I didn't mean to." Tony exhaled. "It's fine. Just don't sneak up on people in a world full of assassins." Deku nodded hard. "Yes, sir." He stepped closer and held out a folded page from his notebook. "I made a list," Deku said, voice small. "Things you can't measure with machines." Tony took the page carefully. He read it under the rooftop light. The handwriting was neat. The list was simple. Courage, kindness, trust, hope. The way someone stands back up. The way people help each other when they are scared. Tony stared at the page for a long moment. Then he looked at Deku. "You wrote this for me?" Tony asked. Deku nodded. "You said tools can't be the point. I think you're right." Tony's chest felt tight in a way the arc reactor never caused. He folded the page and slipped it into his jacket pocket like it was something valuable. "It is," he said quietly. "You're going to be a problem for villains one day." Deku blinked. "Is that good?" Tony's mouth twitched. "Very." Deku smiled, small and tired. Then he looked down at the city. "Are you scared?" Deku asked. Tony didn't lie. "Yeah." Deku nodded like that made sense. "Me too." Tony glanced at him. "And you still want to be a hero?" Deku's voice was simple. "Yes." Tony looked out at the night again. He thought about control. He thought about trust. He thought about what kind of person he wanted to be in a world that already had enough monsters. Tony put a hand on the rooftop rail. "Being a hero isn't a quirk," Tony said. "It's a choice." Deku nodded hard. Tony looked toward the corner of the roof where his armor stood, silent and ready. Then he spoke, not loud, but clear. "My choice," Tony said, "is to protect without owning, to build without chaining, to fight without becoming the thing I hate." He stepped toward the suit. The armor opened and sealed around him in smooth pieces, like a promise snapping into place. Friday's voice returned, gentle. "Sir, systems are ready." Tony looked down at Deku through the faceplate. "Go to bed," Tony said. "School in the morning." Deku smiled. "Yes, sir." Tony stepped to the edge of the roof. For a second, he just stood there above the dark city, the lights below like stars turned upside down. Then jets flared. Iron Man rose into the air and shot forward over Musatafu. Not as a replacement for All Might. Not as a new king of heroes. Just as a man who refused to let fear write the future. And in the quiet behind him, the world kept moving. Different now. Watching the sky a little more.